and positive for ourselves and our children. And this is, I don't remember what week it is, but we started this last March. So we're coming on our 1 year anniversary next month of daily webinars in both English and Spanish, kind of by the community, for the community, on a broad range of topics that are related to staying strong and positive. So we're mixing it up. So we hope that you will stay interested and keep learning. And I'm going to ask you to do what Anna and Felicia have already done and say hi. It's week 47. Yes, it is. And say hi. And the way to say hi in the chat is to open the chat, and then you need to click the second in the drop-down menu, which says all panelists and attendees. And that's important for later. And you can see that Terry Gips is here with me. And we're going to say more about Terry in a minute. And Andrew is with us from Be Strong Families. Clara, welcome, Clara. Welcome, Heather, from, how is Texas going, Heather? How's your power situation and your water situation? I was reading this morning about people needing to boil water in Texas, and that your grid went down in Texas and not related to the Texas only grid. Felicia, welcome from New Jersey, and Anna, welcome back. Hi, Glenda from Newark, and Morgan from Sheboygan. I just always love saying that. Hi, Jennifer from Sonoma. Nice to see you. I think you're actually in Calistoga, aren't you, Jennifer? Oh, you're still boiling water, but you're better today. Good. Glad to hear it, Heather. Your son lives in Dallas, Anna. No gas at gas station. He has no water. Oh, my. Michelle. Hi, Michelle from Western New York. Hi, Amelia from Chicago. I'm Kathy, and I'm in Evanston, Illinois, and it's 12 o'clock. So we're going to move to the next slide. We have a bunch more people joining us today, but they'll come on as we go. So I'm delighted to be here with Terry Gips from the Alliance for Sustainability. And we have launched a poll asking you if you were here last week with Terry. Just interesting to see if Terry's has done a number of webinars for us. Last week's, just to remember, was on fundamental needs, which I think were really incredible. It's an incredible lens through which to view co-creating a sustainable future for all of us. So if you were here last week, if you could answer yes. And we have about 90 people registered for today. So just skating a little bit. The topic today is taking the natural step to sustainability, health, and saving money and the planet. It's always great when you can save money and the planet, right? Hi, Joy from New Jersey. Nice to see you today. Nice to be with you today. All right. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping things. The first is the ways to engage, and the primary way to engage you're using, which is the chat. And again, I'm going to say it, if I say it once, I say it probably 5 times, and still people don't remember to do it. But I need you to go to the second on the drop-down menu and direct your comments to all panelists and attendees. That way, you'll all be able to see what each other is saying, and you'll be able to respond to each other. So the second way to engage is to raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, Andrew Hitchcock, who's in the background, also from Minnesota, will unmute you. You'll need to unmute yourself, and then you'll be able to speak. So without further ado, agreements. In recognition that we co-create this safe space together, we have these agreements that we ask if you agree to the agreements. And as you can see, people are anxious to get started and everybody's agreeing. So I'm going to turn it over to Terry, and welcome and thank you. And so glad to be here with you today.
Thanks so much, Kathy. And thank you, Andrew. It's really fabulous to be able to be with you guys and with everybody from all over. It's really a great privilege. And I'm excited to share about ways that we can really make a difference in our homes, with our families, and in our communities, and also for the planet. So let's just get started with it. So I'll just say that I've had a diverse background for the last 40 years working in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, everything from Wall Street and Cargill and Aveda to working in the White House and for 2 congressmen and for the Cooperative Extension Service and University of Minnesota at Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And I've done research on organic and sustainable agriculture around the world in 45 countries. And I've written, it cuts off on this, but Breaking the Pesticide Habit and also the Humane Consumer and Producer Guide. The Alliance I volunteer at as the president and co-founder. Our mission is to co-create sustainability on a personal, organizational, and planetary level. We were founded almost 40 years ago. We have a free membership, so please feel free to become a member. We would love to have you. We have recently come out with our Declaration of Co-Creation and Interdependence. That was the first of the 3 webinars that I've done with Be Strong Families. We have what we call our green print, which is our sort of plan of how we could bring about this fundamental shift in the world. We have a new book coming out called You Can Save the World by Lori Myron Manbeck. It's a wonderful, short, inspiring, great photos, really a great gift to give to people or yourself. And Lori has also been leading something with her business called Inclusivity, who we partner with on what we call our sustainability challenge. So every day, I'm actually doing one tonight at 6 o'clock. You can tune in and just do some simple steps that you can take. We have a weekly podcast that we also do with Inclusivity. And also we have what's a forthcoming campaign for sustainability, health, equity, and kindness, which we call our She Kindness for Sustainability, Health, Equity, our She Kindness campaign. So I thought we might begin with another poll, just to sort of see where you are about things. So maybe Andrew, you can put that up. Are we getting some results?
Yeah.
They're not showing on my screen, so.
Yeah, we've had about 28 people vote so far.
We got results from the last webinar poll that we could announce that 48% of the people were here last week, of the people who voted, and 52 weren't. So you're about 50-50.
Great. Oh, here we go.
Hi, Maxine. And I guess for sharing the poll results, it looks like the lion's share of people, 71%, are optimistic that we can turn things around and address the challenges we face. That's what I would have said too.
Wow, I'm happy to hear that. That's great.
50% of the people feel confused or not sure. And a couple people said I'm pessimistic about the future for humans and the planet.
Great.
But
well,
nobody said that things were going well.
Yeah, this is impressive that people are so positive. Well, I will give you more reasons to feel that way. We've got a closing poll, so hopefully you'll still be positive and optimistic, and including the 2 of you who were less so. So thanks, that's great. Let's see. Why am I? Okay, so I thought I might begin with a little quote. This is from great philosopher named Woody Allen, who said that more than any time in history, humankind faces a crossroads. One path leads to despair and utter hopelessness, the other to total extinction. Let us pray that we have the wisdom to choose correctly. Well, thank you, Woody. Fortunately, there is a third path, and that's the path we're going to talk about today, the path of sustainability. So why are we here? These are just some of the reasons why: for our children, for all the animals that we love in the world, and for our ecosystems. This, to me, is really one of the most important questions anybody has ever asked. by Buckminster Fuller. He said, how do we make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological damage or disadvantage to anyone? So I think this is just a great, great question to sort of live into. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. And I think I can share a positive answer to that question. So first thing is we'll talk about what is sustainability. I'll share some good news about our planet that almost never gets talked about by environmentalists. We'll talk about this thing called the natural step framework, who's using it, actions you can take based on these 4 principles that are part of it. Very simple steps, and then open up to questions and discussion. But really we can take, there'll be throughout opportunities for questions and discussion throughout. So would it be helpful in your mind if we could have a world in which you could save money, time, and your health, that would support families and the work you're doing with families, that could improve performance, could shift from problem solving to vision and breakthrough solutions, could have your values aligned with your practices, that we could overcome all the different types of divisions, political and others, that we do have, that we could use it in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors, if we could inspire and engage an entire community, and if we could address all aspects of sustainability in one effort. And I believe that what we're going to talk about today does all of these things. So another poll, just to get a sense from you about your knowledge about sustainability. So Andrew, if you can put that poll up. And I'm not seeing the results as they come in, so maybe whenever you've got them, Andrew or Kathy, you can tell me.
Sounds good. I'll wait about 15 more seconds.
Okay.
So 44% of the people said they've heard a little about it. 26% said this is my first time hearing about it. And 30% said I try to live sustainably. No one said I know a lot about it, but I think that's because if you know a lot about it, you try to live sustainably.
Exactly. Well, that's great. That's very helpful just to hear. So thanks, everyone. And I hope and think that for those of you who don't know much about it, you will soon know a lot about it. And I hope it makes a lot of sense. And for those of you who do know or live sustainably, I hope you'll learn some new things, some new approaches to how we can bring that about. All right, now I'm gonna there we go. So the roots of sustainability go back into every different spiritual tradition. Many people have practiced this in many different ways. I'm just going to quickly share a few of those roots of sustainability, even though it wasn't called sustainability. The sun also rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south and turns about to the north. It whirls about continuously, and the wind returns again according to its circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place where the rivers come, they return again. The thing that has been, it is what shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. So this comes from Ecclesiastes, from the Bible. And they were not trained in sustainability, but somehow they understand the interconnections between all things. Native American proverb that the frog does not drink up the pond in which it lives. From the Iroquois, we learn about the concept of the 7th generation. In every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. So not just what happens to us, but we're thinking when we make decisions out 7 generations. There's a great teaching from those who wrote the Talmud that God brought Adam to the Garden of Eden and said, "Behold my works, see how beautiful they are, how excellent. All that I have created for your sake did I create it. See to it that you do not corrupt and destroy my world, for if you do, there will be no one to set it to repair it after you." So the whole idea about we have this responsibility to take care of creation. So it's an incredible opportunity and gift that we've been given, but there's no Superman or Superwoman that's going to come fix it if we screw it up. This is really our responsibility to be good stewards of all creation. There are a lot of definitions of sustainability. I don't think there's a best definition. Each one sort of has its own essence. So I'm going to share just 3 different definitions. And by the way, this is looking down on the various paddies in Bali, in Indonesia. So the first definition comes from the Alliance for Sustainability. And we feel that there are 4 different parts to sustainability. It has to be ecologically sound, economically viable, socially just, and humane, which is a great word meaning to embody our highest values, so how we treat people, animals, and the earth. So it's like a chair that you sit on that has 4 legs. We need all 4 of these legs to actually achieve sustainability. And what I think is important about it is that sustainability really embodies our greatest hopes, dreams, and visions for us and the world, while allowing us to fulfill our fundamental needs and create a world that really works for everyone and all life for all time, that has these 4 different components. It embraces terms that you may have heard of, like regeneration, resilience, restoration, many other cutting-edge approaches. So it's a very inclusive umbrella term, and we support all of these other approaches. The most widely used definition comes from the United Nations, and that is that sustainable development or sustainability meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So we take care of our needs today, but we assure that future generations can have their needs met. And we're talking about all life, not just humans. In business, often it's talked about sustainability having a triple bottom line, the environment, social, and financial. Sometimes we call this people, planet, profits, the 3 Ps. Sometimes the 3 Es for equity, ecology, economy. Whatever way you want to talk about it, these 3 different components are the way many businesses orient their work. Ultimately, sustainability is really nothing very special. It's just common sense. Of course, you're going to take good care of the people around you and your family and your community, as well as taking care of the environment that allows us to live. I had this sort of vision or dream about sustainability being like a circle. And around the circle are all kinds of doorways. And there really are hundreds of them. These are just a few: social justice, business, spirituality, architecture, environment, exercise, art, health. There are many, many more. And the idea is that I feel it's our job to welcome every person into this world of sustainability, because once people have found a doorway with an entrance sign that works for them, whatever it might be, once they're inside, they'll see that all of these things are all interconnected. So any questions or comments about sustainability? Did that make sense? And you can put them in the chat, and then we can explore those. And then I think while you're doing that, Andrew, if you could put up the next poll, which is just asking, did that make sense about sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, Terry, I think for me, one of the key things about sustainability, we've talked about this before, is I'm always interested in bridging to family support or to child abuse prevention. And I think sustainability, obviously has roots in business and the triple bottom line, and has roots in environmentalism, and has roots in development work. I'm looking to plant some seeds in the family support field. And I think that family development and sustainability have a connection with each other. They're like sisters or something, which is if we think about what do we need to do to make our families and our communities sustainable, to make them go forward. And a lot of times we think about this through protective factors lens in terms of like what people can do, like social emotional stuff and resilience and psychological, creating environments psychologically. I think it's also really interesting to think about the macro questions related to sustainability and like racism and social justice being things that undermine the sustainability of families and communities, or social injustice. So I think sustainability is a nice, I think for us in the family serving field, if we can link to this discourse, link to this conversation, link to these ideas, we might find a broader audience for the kinds of things that we know a lot about. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's beautifully said. So thanks.
Is it resonating with you guys? Other people. I know that usually we have between 70 and 80% of the people on the webinars are providing direct services to families. So I want to see some yeses if it makes sense in terms of I know sometimes when we're in this field, we take off our professional hat in order to take in things about our own family, or we take off our professional hat in order to, we could do that when we're engaging in environmental things. But I want to know, are you seeing the connection between the work you do every day with families and what Terry just told us about sustainability? I know I usually don't ask yes or no questions, but Anna says yes. How about the rest of you? You can say not so much.
And Kath, the other thing I'll say is that for those who, sort of understood it somewhat, we're going to be going into it in much greater depth. So it was just to get a sense of, where people were.
No, and I know, but I'm just saying, when you told them what sustainability is, I'm wondering if they're receiving it in their professional capacity, or if they're receiving it as a person in the planet,
Right. No, that's great.
Sometimes we create silos, and we look at, our reducing the use of plastic is something that I do, but it's not something that's directly related to my job.
Exactly.
So yep. I'm wondering if they're connecting it to their job, and people are saying somewhat and yes, and maybe I'm just going to encourage you to listen with that idea of the question of how do we contribute to the sustainability, the sufficiency, the interdependence, the growth and development of families and communities in order to keep them sustainable,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrew, do you want to just say the poll results?
Sure. We've got 22 or 69% that said yes, they do understand what sustainability means. 31% said somewhat, and 0% said no.
All right, great. So hopefully, for those of you who are somewhat, you'll soon have a better sense of it when we actually apply it to real things. I'll just mention about how I connected with the natural step. The first time I heard the word the natural step, I thought it was weird. I thought it was like a new dance or like a shoe company or what you do after the 12th step, something sort of strange like that. But when I actually learned about it, I thought, oh, it makes sense because they're really talking about what's the natural step for each person, for each family, for each organization, for each community to take. And I first learned about it from a woman, Inga Schalander, who's was the head of the Swedish Ecological Farmers Association way back in 1991. It had just begun. And she shared with me how she was in a pitched battle with the conventional farmers and how the natural step actually helped bring both together and completely change the direction of Swedish agriculture, so that the goal of Swedish conventional farmers is on our way to the cleanest agriculture in the world. to become completely sustainable. So very, very exciting. And I was intrigued by that. And then I was working for Aveda in 1995, and we had a big Earth Day conference in New York City with the founder of the Natural Step, Dr. Carl Henrik Robert. And I was so blown away by him and inspired, as was everybody else, about the work that he had done transforming things in Sweden. And so Paul Hawken, who had written a book called The Ecology of Commerce and became the first head of the Natural Step in the United States, invited me to become a trainer for the Natural Step in '96. And after that, I went to visit what are called eco-municipalities in Sweden. These are cities in Sweden like Stockholm that are using the Natural Step as their guide to sustainability. And I was so inspired by that we started leading tours to Sweden to look at how this was being used. And we brought the Swedish leaders here and traveled around the United States to speak to various groups. So we've been offering trainings on this ever since. So I think this poem by a woman named Marcy Hans sort of captures the power of the Natural Step. Fueled by a million man-made wings of fire, the rocket tore a tunnel through the sky, and everybody cheered. Fueled only by a thought from God, the seedling urged its way through the thickness of black, and as it pierced the heavy ceiling of the soil, up into outer space, no one even clapped. So the whole idea of how we look at technology and these big rockets and everything and appreciate that miracle that they are, but we don't appreciate the miracle that happens every day of the seedling urging itself up through the thickness of black, up into outer space. And it's that miracle that takes place that allows us to have the food that we eat, the clothes we wear, pretty much everything that we have comes from that process. So I would like us to take a quick look at that. And the place to begin is with our home, Mother Earth, Spaceship Earth, as Buckminster Fuller called it. Every astronaut that's ever gone up into outer space has said that it was a transformational experience to look back on our planet and to see it as one whole connected ecosystem with no political boundaries whatsoever. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell said, "My view of our planet was a glimpse of divinity." German astronaut Sigmund Hahn said, "Before I flew, I was already aware of how small and vulnerable our planet is, but only when I saw it from space, in all its ineffable beauty and fragility, did I realize that humankind's most urgent task is to cherish and preserve it for future generations." So today, what I'd like to do with you is to share a new perspective on Spaceship Earth, a new way of looking at it. And I'm just wondering if anybody, in looking at this picture, sees something unusual about it. And just because it's hard to communicate, I will just say that I took our planet, the picture, this is the most repeated picture in the history of the world. And I took this picture
upside down.
Yes, exactly. And I just flipped it 180 degrees. So we can look at our home from a different perspective and maybe get some new insights. Einstein said that the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we used when we created them. In other words, we have to think outside the box. And here's a little cartoon, guy saying to his cat, "Never ever think outside the box." But I want you guys to think outside the box. Max Planck, who got the Nobel Prize, said, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." It's quite profound on many levels. When I was young, I always wanted to be an astronaut. And I would play with a little boy, and we would practice getting boosted into outer space and all of that. And I'm just curious if anybody here ever wanted to be an astronaut. Do we have any fellow astronauts besides me? I see you. What do you think, Kath? Did you ever want to be an astronaut?
No.
No. All right. Well,
I'm thinking of Psychonaut, but
what's that?
I was thinking about Psychonaut. I wanted to be a Psychonaut. I mean, I wanted I haven't wanted to be an I didn't want to actually ever go up into space.
Yes.
It didn't appeal to me to be trapped in that little tin can. And
Right, right. Well, I think there are a few others with us that felt that way.
I have wanted to experience, like, spiritually, like to experience
Yes.
the connectedness and the whole. Like, I have been very interested in shamanism and interested in other ways of being able to, and the fractals. I mean, those of you who are on the
Right.
fractal ideas, like physics, I've been very interested in that, into how do we rethink, get out from. And I would just say that in graduate school, I go to a school called California Institute of Integral Studies, and we had our in-person, retreats at the center called IONS, which is in Northern California, and it was founded by an astronaut.
Oh, that's funny.
Transformative experience, and was like, we have to do, and it's about science. It's about how do we use science to understand, the different perspective that he had gotten, the spiritual experience that he had,
It's
being.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, this picture is a picture of this little boy that I grew up with. This is John Grunsfeld walking in outer space. His dream of becoming an astronaut actually came true. He was sort of the head of the Hubble program and went up 4 times. So
Really?
so this is a picture of John. By the way, his father is a well-known architect, Kathy, in Chicago, and
Wow.
has done a lot of Tony Grunsfeld has done a lot of the great architecture.
So said it was scary. Maria said she did want to be an astronaut. Yesenia said no, and Kawana said she always wanted to be a teacher. Yesenia.
Yeah.
But that's really crazy that, playing astronaut, and then your playmate becomes.
I agree. Well, Kath, I've got some bad news for you, Kath, and
Yes.
several of you others that didn't want to be an astronaut.
Yes.
We actually are all astronauts. So sorry about that, but whether you didn't want to be in the tin can or not, we're all astronauts, and this is our spaceship Earth, because each day, each of us is at the controls of our spaceship. The food we eat, the work we do, driving, whatever, are all affecting this spaceship that we live on. And the challenge is that, unlike the astronauts, no one ever trained us on how our spaceship operates. So we've sort of been doing whatever we feel like, but they're actually, we've got some trouble on board as a result of that. There actually are operating rules for this planet. And that's what I want to focus on, because that's the purpose of the natural step.
Okay, so I just want to make maybe I'll ask it as a question, because I always think of things as a conversation. But it's my understanding that when Western civilization does a particularly terrible job of trying to understand the operating system, but that indigenous cultures were more attuned to living sustainably. So I just want to make sure that we're to note that we may be Columbusing this, so to speak. Like, we're discovering something that human beings knew before and lost track of when they decided to prioritize making money and colonizing and
right. I think that there's some truth to that, but if you do studies of most of those cultures, there were often challenges with some of the practices that were going on at various levels in the full definition of sustainability. So it's not to diss any of those, because I think they're important, and we, like you say, we have a lot to learn from them. But it's also at the same time to say that we're in this together, and that we really need to learn from each other what we can do. So here is some good news about our home, Spaceship Earth. 4 pieces of good news that environmentalists don't talk with us about.
We need good news, Terry.
Here's your good news. First, our planet has an extraordinary design. I know this sounds weird, but our planet is actually designed to get cleaner, purer, more abundant, and more diverse all on its own. That's because of something called the natural cycle on the planet. And in a full workshop, I would explain how that operates through the process of photosynthesis and some of the other natural cycles. Yes.
Have you ever heard of biomimicry?
Yes. I
Okay.
took out my biomimicry slide for this just to cut down on slides, but I love biomimicry.
Oh, and people should watch the TED Talk, watch the TED Talks on biomimicry, because it really goes to make the point that all the technologies we develop, if we mimic natural, natural beings, natural processes, that's really what it is, that
Yeah.
biomimicry. I can't remember the woman, what,
Janine Benyus, Benyus, Janine, Janine. I'm going to keep going, Kathy, because otherwise we're going to run out of time.
Yeah, I know. I'm just telling people that. And I want to say that Jennifer says her 4-year-old daughter is listening, and she says she wants to be an astronaut and take care of the Earth too.
Ah, good.
Wants to be a scientist at 8 years.
I love it. That's beautiful. Thank you. We don't have an energy shortage on this planet. We talk about it. We're going to run out of energy. But the fact is, the Earth receives 13,000 times more solar energy than is used by our entire society. There is no energy shortage. 1 hour of the sun's energy absorbed on this Earth, 1 hour can run everything on our planet for 1 year. 1 hour, 1 year. So we just need to figure this out in a new way. People often talk, we're going to run out of stuff. And yes, there are limited amounts of some things, but for huge numbers of things, we have massive amounts of them. And in some cases, it's not the problem that we're going to run out of them. Some of them, like petroleum, we're not going to run out of. It's just we will have polluted our environment and caused so much climate change, we won't be able to live. So we have enough of what we need. And then the last thing is that human beings are part of this thing called the natural cycle. It's not bad to be a human being. So knowing that, what's the challenge? The challenge is over the last 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, the way we've been living has been violating the operating rules of Spaceship Earth. Now, we weren't intentionally trying to violate the operating rules. We didn't know what they were. But the truth is, if we stay on our present path, we will create conditions that will no longer allow us to continue living here. I want to make clear, life on the Earth will go on, but it will just be minus us. So what are the operating rules of Spaceship Earth? There are just 4 operating rules. If we follow these 4 operating rules, we can actually have a healthy, sustainable present and future. But we have to do all 4 of these rules. Here are the rules. The first, based on the natural step, these 4 principles or rules. The first is to limit what we take from the Earth. So here we're talking about minimizing the mining of metals and minerals and the burning of fossil fuels. And the question is, can we do that? And the answer is, of course, simple things like recycling or product take back. We can take our electronics back when we're done, or biking or walking, other forms of public transportation, or using renewable energy. All of these things are happening in a very big way now. So we can do this. This is not hard. That's the first of the rules, what we take from the Earth. The second deals with how do we avoid toxic substances that we make? Can we find substitutes for hazardous pesticides, plastics, and chemicals? And again, the answer is absolutely. We can buy organic food. We can use natural cleaning products. We can use natural personal care products. This is just not hard. Third principle is to respect the Earth. So we need to protect biodiversity, ecosystems, and natural resources. We can use 100% post-consumer recycled paper. We can compost. We can protect watersheds. We can save water. Again, not hard. But the fourth principle, this is the big one. And this particularly applies to Be Strong families. This is more of a challenge, but you guys know how to do this one really well. How do we meet fundamental human needs? So we need to remove barriers to people being able to meet their fundamental needs. Could be through community gardens, or mind-body movement, exercise, or purchasing fair trade products. And we'll talk about these. in just a minute. So I'm sorry, Kath, what?
If you go back to the previous one, because that's a connect between last week also, because what are fundamental needs? And some of those fundamental needs for belonging, for meaning,
Yep.
Are things that Be Strong Families and others here are working on every day, which
exactly. And we'll talk about those towards the end.
Okay.
So if we follow these 4 principles, we can have a healthy, sustainable present and future. This is great news. We're not giving up anything. This is not bad news. We can have a 4 to 100-fold increase in productivity, better than the Industrial Revolution. We can save huge amounts of money. We can create jobs. We can have livable communities. We can, in many cases, even reduce taxes. This is not bad. This is the greatest opportunity humans have ever had on this planet. It's the best thing that could happen to business, government, or people, or families. So we can fundamentally transform life on this planet. We don't need to wait generations and generations to do this. We can do this now. We can start turning things around in just 5 to 10 years to meet people's fundamental needs and bring about true wealth, health, and sustainability for us, while assuring a healthy, sustainable future for all of our children. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And I love this from Arundhati Roy, who said, another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. So the purpose of the natural step is to develop and share a common framework comprised of easily understood, scientifically based principles that can serve as a compass to guide our society toward a just and sustainable future. It was founded by this man, Dr. Karl-Henrik Robert, a very well-known oncologist who led the no smoking campaign in Sweden, and then led this natural step. And an amazing, amazing guy. He wrote this book, The Natural Step Story, Seeding a Quiet Revolution. Excellent book. So here are just some of the companies that have been using the natural, or not just companies, but organizations. IKEA, the world's largest furniture manufacturer, Electrolux, Interface, the world's largest commercial floor covering manufacturer, McDonald's, Starbucks, Roman Haas, CH2M Hill Engineers, Nike, Mitsubishi Electric, Bank of America, a bunch of money managers, US Army, Navy, and Air Force have all used the natural step. The state of Oregon, Whistler was the first community in North America. Santa Monica was the first in the US. Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Duluth, Madison, 24 other eco-municipalities. The American Planning Association, University of Texas at Houston, Ridgeview Medical Center, and Basilica of St. Mary. Many, many institutions have been using this. So wanted to open up to any questions or comments, if that makes sense, about the natural step. And then, so you can put your comments in, and then maybe we can go to the next poll, Andrew.
So my question is, Terry, if it's so good for everybody and easy to do, or not, or possible to do, and if we just get behind it and all that good stuff, then why isn't it already happening? Who loses, or what are the barriers?
Well, I guess I'll give 2 different answers. The who loses, because you asked the who loses. The who loses are petrochemical companies, the companies that are making fossil fuels and pesticides and those kinds of things. But they have expertise, and that expertise can be used. And in many cases, these companies are already making the transition. You've seen General Motors and Ford and these companies making a commitment to electric vehicles. We don't need to have gas guzzlers. We can have even better quality, less expensive electric vehicles. So there's some push.
That General Motors, one of the big motor company, one of them said that they were not going to have any fossil fuel burning cars in Europe as of 2030, which is
Exactly. So we're seeing that with all of them. And even with the oil companies, they're investing in solar. So they see that their time is coming to an end. And so they can help lead this transformation to, a renewable economy. And so that's one of the places. And the other is just, a lot of people just aren't aware of it. And that's why we're trying to make people aware. There's more and more discussion amongst all kinds of companies, though, about sustainability overall. So I think that is changing.
So 64% of the people said they understand, yes. 32% said somewhat, and 1 said no. And I would say why the no, like, I don't understand. Is the natural step the 4 rules, or is the natural step, like,
it's
so,
both it's an organization,
uh-huh.
but we speak about the natural step framework, and that's these 4 rules. There's some other components that, just because of time, I'm not going to go into. There's a whole process that we use called an ABCD process for achieving sustainability. And there's underlying scientific principles that are all part of the natural step. So I'm just trying to focus on the practical components.
The practical are, take less from the planet, right?
Yes. And we're going to go into those right now.
Okay. I thought we were.
So we're going to do practical application of these pretty quickly, just because I want to be able to get through them all, especially the 4th of them. So how do these apply to your life? So the first one is, limiting what we take from the earth. So use renewable energy and non-toxic reusable materials to avoid the spread of hazardous levels of pollutants and mine metals and minerals. So we'll take a look at some examples, simple things. And I'm just going to run through these really quickly because you'll have the slides if people want to spend more time. Only about half of our aluminum cans are recycled. And what people don't realize, we throw away enough aluminum cans in 3 months to rebuild the entire US commercial air fleet. Waste. Making new aluminum cans from used one takes 95% less energy. And so we can save huge amounts of energy and materials just by recycling. It's not hard. We produce huge amounts of waste, and we can reduce our waste dramatically and decrease greenhouse gas emissions if we just did all the recycling and composting that is possible. And in fact, if we were to start doing that just itself, only the recycling and composting, we could get rid of 21% of all of the coal-fired power plants in the United States, just like that, by recycling and composting. They take up so much energy, that waste. So we can change things and do it differently. Then there's the whole idea of a sharing economy, and all kinds of great examples. We don't each need to own everything. We can share things, whether it's a bike, whether it's a car. There are all kinds of things that we can share in a sharing economy. Batteries. Batteries are one of the simplest, easiest ways to save yourself huge amounts of money. 2 rechargeable batteries will save you $1,000 over their life. Just 2 batteries, $1,000 by reusing them over and over again. They work just as well. Very simple. Same thing with LED lights. Each one are going to save you $102 over their life. $102 of savings just by having these LED lights. You can purchase green energy. It's becoming easier and easier. And in some cases, you'll actually save money by having green energy. And you can participate in a community solar garden. If you don't have a roof, or you're in an apartment building, or wherever you are, you can subscribe and become part of this. You will save 5 to 10% on your electric bill by being part of one of these community solar gardens. Bike commuting. One person calculated the benefits from a mixture of bus and biking instead of driving. 3,200 pounds of CO2 a year, saves $2,500 a year, burned 134,000 calories, or 38 pounds of fat. So you can get multiple benefits by doing some of these things. Very simple. If you have a car, you could do something that they teach everyone in Sweden called eco driving. Properly inflate your tires, avoid sudden stops and starts, drive the speed limit, and you can save 25% or more on your fuel costs right away. You can just do this today. Not hard. So on this first one, any questions or comments that people might have?
We do. Lauren has a question, which she says,
Yeah.
I'm really discouraged about sustainability sometimes because I work really hard to omit plastic in my household as much as possible. But how much can my personal choices actually help when companies are dumping and wasting so much?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. And I think that, it's sort of like the example of the starfish. Somebody has to start throwing the starfish back, and it may seem endless and impossible, but our individual actions do make a difference. And especially if we talk with people about it and share, and we create a culture where that's just how we raise kids, that's what our families do, that's what our communities do. And it's an astounding thing what can happen. And as that happens, two things happen, Lauren. One is that we will be a model, we will be a voice for that. But many of the people who work in those companies are individuals also. And they are starting to put pressure on their own companies. And you, as a shareholder, if you want to invest in a company or just a public voice on the internet, can speak out and say, why are you doing this? And more companies realize that they need to turn things around with their operations. So we're seeing huge shifts as the public becomes more aware and starts getting more committed to sustainability.
I wonder also, Terry, I was thinking like Food Inc. was the first place I saw that video. But when you say you're voting every time you're buying something. So
exactly.
If you're not buying cases of plastic water bottles, but instead you're buying refillable water bottles or Brita.
And that'll be our next example for the second principle.
Okay, sorry.
So I'll move on.
I was wondering for the first principle was about COVID and the fact that, like, it occurs to me, I'm just driving a lot less. I'm also traveling on planes a lot less than I was before. So that is helpful too. It's like, even if I have my own car,
it is making a big difference. Yeah. In terms of pollution, in terms of use of energy, all kinds of levels. So the second principle we talked about is what we make, avoiding toxic substances, find substitutes for hazardous pesticides, plastics, and chemicals. So we can use safe, biodegradable substances that don't cause the spread of toxins in the environment. So you can make your own non-toxic cleaning products. You'll save a bunch of money. It only costs like 50 cents instead of $3 or $4 to get the cleaning products. There are excellent products from all kinds of companies now that are at the same price as regular cleaning products. And the city of St. Paul did a study of 12 commercial cleaning products, and they found that the natural cleaning product actually worked better than the conventional products, and the employees didn't get sick from it. So it can be a positive thing. Water bottles, I don't really need to say much about it other than that our recycling rate is only 23% for plastic water bottles. We are wasting huge amounts. And, that's billions of dollars worth of plastic that are just totally wasted and don't need to be. We have to think about our dollars when we buy things as votes. We are voting for the kind of world that we want to create. Food choices are really one of the three largest environmental impacts that we as consumers make. US sales of organic food and beverages have grown from $1 billion in 1990 to more than $55 billion in 2019, and is still one of the fastest growing areas of the supermarket. So we can do that with our dollars. Here's an example: McDonald's in Sweden. They use non-toxic cleaners. They got rid of all their styrofoam. They serve organic milk, organic ice cream. They have veggie burgers. They have organic beef. They've worked with the farmers to convert to organic. They ask if you want a straw and a lid, and that just saves them each $1,000 per store. So we have companies that are actually leading the way to help make this kind of change. Integrated pest management. The city of Santa Monica and many other cities and businesses are using integrated pest management. They get better control of the pests, but they save money, 30%, and they get rid of very toxic sprayed chemicals that affect people. So you can have a win-win-win with this. So any questions or comments on this second principle?
You better get to the third, because
I will move on to the third. Is there one there?
No, people are talking more about getting food delivered in the plastic bags at the grocery stores and stuff.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to close the loop on that and probably do a deposit and then return whatever that container is. So it can be used over and over again. And some of my friends are actually creating businesses like at big crowd events, at concerts and stuff, something called R Cup, where you can actually do that. You could keep the cup, but you will pay for it, or you can have it reused over and over again, cleaned and reused. That's, I think, where we're going to go, a zero waste society. So the third of the principles is respecting the earth, protecting biodiversity, ecosystems, and natural resources. So we need to simply safeguard soils, water, and air, or we won't be able to eat, drink, or breathe. I love this Native American proverb: only when the last tree is cut, only when the last river is polluted, only when the last fish is caught will they realize that you can't eat money. That gives a context. So this community garden program is something that I was the co-founder of. We created 20 community gardens in the worst housing projects in Sacramento, involving 4,000 people, became a huge success. It saved Park and Rec huge amounts of money, $10,000 per acre, because people did the work. We reduced violence and graffiti. It improved people's health, school behavior, and performance in school. A win-win-win-win-win across the board. And we had a harvest potluck that brought the community together. It's really a powerful tool. This was created by my son, Adam, when he was 4. He said, "Dad, you need to use both sides of the paper or it wrecks the earth." So do we want recycled paper? This is a trick question. Most people will say yes, no, but the answer is no. We don't want recycled paper. We want post-consumer waste recycled paper. That is paper that's been collected by a recycling system and made back into the product. If you don't buy post-consumer, you're not closing the loop. So we need to close that loop by insisting on getting post-consumer paper. Here's an example. If every household in the US replaced just one roll of toilet paper with 100% recycled paper, it would save 300,000 trees, 1.2 million cubic feet of landfill space, and 122 million gallons of water, and no chlorine. Small changes that we make can have a huge impact. Turning off water, turning off the tap when brushing our teeth saves 1 gallon of water per use. Using a faucet and shower aerator cuts the water use in half, and it saves you money. Using a front load washer uses 50% less water and 30% less energy than a top loader. All of this saves money. And what people don't understand is all water is energy, because all water had to be pumped. And in every city, pumping water is the largest energy use of every city. So every time you use water, we're also using energy. This is a powerful book by John Robbins, The Food Revolution: How Your Diet Can Help Save Your Life and the World. People don't realize that 2 pounds of beef from California can take up to 5,200 gallons of water to produce. That's all the water a person uses for showering for 1 year.
Wow.
The standard American diet will actually take away 20 years of people's life, and it will cost us each, as taxpayers, $3 million per person in medical costs, according to this Stanford pediatrician. So you can have big savings from plant-based food. A vegan diet can save over $1,200 a year. The direct healthcare costs attributed to meat consumption is estimated at $61 billion. It's much more now. Hypertension, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and low meat diets. This isn't vegan diet, but a low meat diet can cut climate change costs by half by 2050, saving $20 trillion. Simple things, just eating less meat. So I think we're just about out of time. Should I go into the fourth principle?
Fourth one, and we'll just, because it'll be available online afterwards.
Yes, the rest of it will be available. So the idea is, how do we meet people's fundamental needs? Well, we can use less stuff and save money while allowing every person to meet their fundamental needs. So just appreciating nature, cherry blossoms in Washington. This cartoon, I want to sue the Sierra Club for pain and suffering, for making me aware of the pain and suffering. There's so many good examples of this. My favorite one is women's action to gain economic security in the Bay Area where low-income immigrant Latinas launched a greenhouse cleaning co-op where they got paid well, they weren't exposed to toxics, and had really good incomes. There's a big connection between art and sustainability, art and culture. And so this is just one of the programs that the city of St. Paul did, where we hired artists to create waste containers or recycling containers. So we create jobs for the artists, but we also get rid of the waste. At IKEA, they're a great example of a company really using this, where people are called coworkers, not employees. Commitment to diversity, innovation, open communication. They have an annual anonymous company-wide survey. Half of their workers do flex hours or compressed schedules or telecommute. And we can, when we have publicly assisted affordable housing, it should be green housing, at the same time. And this is a great slide comparing the difference between, if we invest in our kids, we'll have a $1 million benefit. And if we don't, going through the juvenile detention system and prison and all that, it will cost us $3.8 million. So this is nearly a $5 million decision with each kid. And this is how we can talk to Republicans to say it's worth making these investments. So I'll just, I think we have another minute, but I'm just going to skip this one thing about how we can meet people's fundamental needs. You can see the slide after. It's a very optimistic and hopeful one. How do we cure our consumption addiction, affluenza, and not consume the planet to death? And we use this work that we talked about last week that you can hear the whole webinar about. Manfred Max-Neef, a Chilean economist who got the Alternative Nobel Prize, about how we can meet people's fundamental needs with unlimited amounts of learning, laughter, love, meaningful work, and community, while eliminating what we don't want: stress, expense, pollution, and violence. And this is a picture of him. And his basic ideas are, we know what these fundamental needs are. There are 10 of them: subsistence, protection, security, affection, understanding, participation, leisure, creativity, identity, meaning, freedom, and transcendence. We went through these last time, and so you can see them in the PowerPoint, but we know what these needs are. They're the same in all countries and in all historic times. They're not interchangeable, and we can actually have more satisfaction and use less stuff. So we can address this consumption addiction. This is an example in Gothenburg, Sweden's second largest city, with a large apartment complex that did all kinds of great things. They put in an attached greenhouse that helped meet a whole number of basic fundamental needs for subsistence and for connection, for creativity, participation, leisure. So we can do this. And the great thing about this is that everybody has these needs. Nobody is against this, regardless of their party. Companies are using this. We can meet everyone's needs, and it's the best antidote to this disease of affluenza. And then we saw this both now and also in the aftermath of 9/11, where we realized that we do care far more. We're not just consumers, we are citizens. We care deeply. And I think this is a great quote: we no longer can have everything we want, but we can be more than we ever imagined. And that's the truth. By using this approach, we can really change things. Be happy, Kathy and I were talking about about a possible presentation that we could do in the future about this, or your organization would be happy to come do something. And then a final quote: when you're inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds, your mind transcends limitations, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. And that's really what I hope that we can all do together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry.
Thank you, Kat.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for being on. If you can fill out the poll before you leave, that would be helpful. And I'm just going to, again, profuse thanks to Terry, and see you all tomorrow or the next day. Tomorrow, we're going to be, Alexandra and I are going to be talking about Black history, celebrating Black History Month, celebrating family and community sustainability. And then next week, we have a whole lineup here for you, from the sadness of grief to holistic protection, starting in a new organization during the pandemic, with Guy Shingothi and a bunch of new hires at Be Strong Families to talk about that. Tunja will be here keeping creativity alive in your home. And then we have our final Black History Month presentation with Alexandra and I on framing the narrative of Black history. So encourage you to amplify the things from this webinar that you're taking away. And if you have something that, next slide, Andrew, because we have to get this going. Wear your mask. And if you or colleagues would like us to host a webinar with us, just write me. And thank you very much. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everybody.